So one section of the TOEFL exam that might seem easy, and I see a lot of students kind of underestimating it, would be the TOEFL listening section. And regardless, it is multiple choice. The sections are pretty easy. When you get a conversation, you only have 5 questions. When you get a lecture, you have 6 questions. They're all multiple choice. So it does seem pretty easy at the beginning. However, it can be difficult because a lot of students don't know exactly what notes to take. So when you are presented with the audio and you're listening very carefully, there's a few points to listen for. Of course, any details, specific details, some names, maybe think of why something is happening. Try see how one event is connected to a previous event. Whenever I'm listening in audios, I try to predict what might happen. If the student is talking to the professor and they're talking about an assignment, I might think about the professor might be suggesting some things to the student on what to do to prepare for the assignment. So try to predict some things. But the best way to prepare is when you're answering these questions. A lot of questions are similar. The same type of questions you might get. How did the conversation start? So now you know that is a regular type of question often asked in the listening of TOEFL. So in future practices or in the actual exam, when you actually are answering the questions and you're listening in the audios, you know to listen and to pay attention to how the conversation started, why the professor mentioned an example, to remember certain details, certain dates, certain examples, and you can learn that through the type of questions. These questions are, of course, all different topics, different themes. However, it's roughly the same category. What is the professor saying? Why is the professor saying this? How did the conversation start? Or what did the professor suggest for the future? What will the student do after the conversation? So you need to pay attention to what type of questions you often see and realize what type of information they regularly ask for. And that will help you to know exactly what information to take notes on while you're listening before you see the questions.